Okay, so now we started the webinar, and I also put the recording on. I know that some people were not able to make it for the webinar, and they will be looking for recording afterwards. So technology allows doing this as well. And would like to start right away. We had already agenda posted in advance. So we have two people who will be contributing today for the first webinar on 360-degree assessment or review or feedback. It's been called in different ways. But just to mention that the whole context of why we do this webinar is because with the International Youth Work Trainers Guild, we implementing now a project. The coding word is Appraiser, and it's basically a service that, an online service that is aiming to enable a professional development of trainers, and one part of it is actually enabling trainers to get feedback from their colleagues, from their participants and their contractors. So that's why we wanted to dive deeper a little bit into 360 review and explore what are the practices around Europe, mainly in the field of training. So from now on, we'll do webinars just to explore practices, to understand what works well, what are the challenges that we need to take into consideration when developing our online service. So today we have two people, Agne Kvikliene joining from Lithuania, and Agne is she was, I would say she was my colleague as a trainer. Then she joined a national agency of Erasmus Plus in Lithuania and worked there for a while. Now she, I think, moved on with much more complex responsibilities, being mom in the recent years. And then we have Darko Markovic, another colleague of mine who works as a trainer, coach, and many other hats. And then you see a screen. You don't see another Agne from Lithuania who is doing a graphic recording this time. But you will see her drawing, and yeah, something is appearing. Yes. And I got the information that this webinar was included into the agenda of the European Youth Forum's Pool of Trainers meeting. So I do hope that some people manage to get involved and follow the webinar. So really, everybody welcome. And without further ado, I'm passing a word to Agne. Just a reminder again that if you click on the button chat, there you will see a link to a meeting notes. If you want to read or you want to actually contribute, you can do it and feel free to do that. You don't need any login to add your thoughts and so on. So we'll try to follow what's going on all channels. So I will keep everybody sound mute except of Agne, who will be speaking, just to avoid any kind of interferences. Then actually, if you have a question, so you can write on the chat window. Also, the Zoom allows you to raise hand in a way. So then we will be able to see also maybe somebody wants to get on the video and ask question to our speakers. So feel free to contribute either by writing, or we can get you on the video and you can say hi and ask the question. Okay?
Good.
So I'm putting also my sound on mute, so there will be less sounds, and now all eyes on you, Agne, and then we plan around 25 minutes for you, including questions, and then we move to Darko's experiences, okay?
Okay, good.
Okay.
So Laimonas introduced me a bit. I will probably just expand my profile while I'm here. While I was working in national agency, I was responsible for lots of things, but one of the things was coordinating trainings, especially national and international trainings, as well as coordinating the pool of trainers. And by coordinating the pool of trainers, we implemented this 360 assessment. We called it a system, not a method, but it's far away from the system, probably. I will explain it later. As Laimonas mentioned, if you have some questions, would be nice just right now that I was speaking and on a chat field, and I can respond directly. I'm glad that I don't need to use any PowerPoint presentation, as Agne from Lithuania, Agne somewhere is doing that. So hope she will structure and visualize my speech. Oh, it's not a speech actually; it's a bit of sharing experiences on this, using this 360 assessment. So I promised a bit. I promised in the beginning not to go deep to 360 assessment from like theoretical thing, because I'm not such kind of an expert to do it. Of course, I Googled a bit of development of this method nowadays, because we used this method system 8 years ago. So you can imagine we didn't have any actually so much online tools, and now like I see that 360 assessment method is established as a quite huge. You can have apps and online tools and other things to manage it. So if someone doesn't know about 360, so it's probably the explanation of this method could be that it's a method which provides an opportunity for a person to get a feedback from different, I would say, parts, like stakeholders, like your co-workers, colleagues, clients in a business field, and in a training field, we call them participants, or any others, yeah? And what is really for me interesting and important, that this is not only to get a feedback, but it should be kind of a supervisor or person lead you to improve your competence, or those gaps you realized after the feedback, yeah, you got from the colleagues. It's written that my internet connection is unstable, but if you will hear me or something is going broken, so please tell me by chat or raised hands. So going back to my agency, so eight years ago, we did have an annual meeting with trainers pool, and actually the initiative came from the trainers to organize something where can you get some feedback, structured feedback from NA, national agency people, but also from colleagues we are working with. And that's how the questionnaire actually was developed. So we used a bit questionnaire, but you can find some templates in a business field, but of course it doesn't work when you think about trainings in a youth field, yeah, and those trainers and trainings system, what we had in our national agencies or in the framework of Youth in Action or Erasmus Plus programs. So, so this questionnaire and the system became a part of a bigger system what we were developing in a national agency. So to understand this, yes, so we coordinated pool of trainers, and we did have kind of an agreement handbook. It was written one, but it was always discussed with trainers and NA workers where we need to improve. And this handbook was filled in, divided in a couple sections, like we were thinking about trainers' responsibilities and NA responsibilities. We're discussing about communication with trainers and NA, about ethics, what is ethics, and so on in the trainings. And we were discussing, of course, and improving the quality of trainings. So before the 360 system, we used the evaluation of trainings itself. And trainers was a part of this system, and we needed to be evaluated, let's say, or got the feedback from participants as well from NA, but it was like quite not so deep enough. So in this field, in this case, we decided, like trainers and NA decided that we need to get a bit deeper feedback for the trainers' development, but as well for the quality of trainings. And while I was preparing for this, not presentation, but this sharing hour, I was thinking, does it really 360 assessment system or method could improve the quality of trainings itself? And in one hand, yes, and in one hand, no, yeah? Probably the answer somewhere is in the middle. So, but basically the idea was also to improve the quality of trainings, yeah, not only to improve or to help trainers to develop their competences. And looking now for this, to like Googling this method, I feel that it was not such a good idea, like looking back to them to those 8 years ago. So how the system worked out? Let's move to this practical section before going to the insights. So before the training, all the trainers and the NA workers were like informed and agreed on that we will use 360-degree assessment method after the training. So with trainers, senior trainings especially, it worked out like after the training, couple of trainers who work together, they sat together and they filled their questionnaire. The same questionnaire was filled by an NA worker who was responsible for the training. I'm just reading for a while a chat, sorry. So this questionnaire was filled by an NA worker, a colleague, a trainer colleague, as well as a participant. So we sent a questionnaire after the training, online questionnaire for participants, and they wrote a feedback or filled some parts with recommendations for the trainer. After the fulfilling the questionnaire, the NA worker, it was me, I was like if I was not involved in a training course, so I was like in a role of a supervisor, but it was not so strong or quality supervision, let's say like this. And we did have a meeting with trainers and where we can evaluate and observe the results of this assessment and feedback. Yeah, the system worked like that. I'm thinking if I'm not missing something, but mainly parts was like this. The questionnaire itself was divided in 3 parts. Was like first part was like preparation for the training, then implementation of a training, and then the evaluation of the training. And each part had like different competences identified, where the trainer applied this competence or not, and you can score the competence, how much quality of this competence he or she had, yeah, or demonstrated during the training course. Someone told that the connection is bad. Lyman, do you know if it's good or not?
Yeah, I think it's more that there was suggestion to have videos of others, but I also said if connection is not very good, please leave your video.
Okay.
Just to imagine a little bit who people are, but also, yeah, sometimes in few moments your sound was getting a bit like distorted. So I think it will get worse. Also, I message you to say that maybe to switch off the video and just leave the sound, because I think video is taking a lot of data.
Okay. Should I do it the same, or it's for other participants?
I think at the moment is okay. Yeah, but
okay,
for the participants, I invited them if they want to join the video. If not, it's okay.
Is it so far clear what I'm talking about? I'm very glad that Agne is drawing, because it's a more visual and structured way to understand. Okay, good. So mainly in this 360 assessment were 3 parts involved: the trainer, like a colleague trainer, NA, national agency, and the participant. Sometimes the trainer himself, herself, could also make a self-assessment according to the questions of his questionnaire. And I'm jumping, I'm not going deep to this structure way, because maybe it's not so much interesting now for this experience. So I'm going to some insights. So thinking about the trainers, it very helped the system for the trainees, actually. Those people who for the first time joined the pool of the trainers. And we had a system that if you, for a while, you could be a trainee, a stagiaire, let's say, or junior trainer. And afterwards, if your assessment is great, or if you are ready to start a training course, you become kind of a trainer, a real trainer of this school. So we used the system, and the system helped in a one way that it was quite easy to plan the learning plan for the trainee, looking to this questionnaire and looking to those competencies of 360, and afterwards also to get or to give a feedback for the trainee. The trainees, I talked with a couple of trainees who just had the system, because we didn't have so much. It was only 2 people actually, or 3, or maybe I can't remember, but I talked with just 2 of them. So the memories of those trainees were not so great as mine. I was thinking that, oh yeah, it was quite well working system, that we had a chat after a while, and it was a very structured way to get a feedback, and also to receive a feedback from a colleague, because it's not so brave, I think, and you should be very self-confident to receive a feedback from the senior trainer even you are a trainee. And it's kind of, moving clothes off and saying, okay, I'm lack of some competences, or I'm not so confident in leading a group or solving a conflict or whatever. So a trainee also reflected on that it was not so easy emotionally to get a feedback, even it was quite a structured way. And the other aspect, what we were discussing about, that afterwards we were trying as national agency to give kind of supervision for this trainee to develop his or her competencies, but actually we didn't have any tools. It was kind of, you can go for a training course, what we can have in our action plan planned, yeah, and that's it. Or you can talk with colleagues. So it was, that's why I was like wondering if it was a system. We called it a system, but it was not a system, or well-developed system, let's say. And those trainees were lacking like a bit of following process, that, okay, I've got a feedback from my colleagues, I've got a feedback from national agency workers, that's nice, I've got some feedback from the participants, but what's next? What can I do with that? With senior trainers, it wasn't like that, because we knew the ways probably how to develop the competences and different ways how to do it. And we don't need it like, or we didn't need to, have kind of extra supervisor to reflect on competences or tools. How can I improve one or another competence, or how to be better in one or another field? But what senior trainers always was complaining about, that it's really time consuming, because was like, you need to spend extra time with your colleague. Yeah, it was like after the training course. Usually it was like directly after the training course, which was not like, in my eyes, like looking, it's not so professional, because you are deep in your training course mood and you want to go back home probably. And afterwards you need to fulfill the questionnaire about your colleagues. So you should be honest. Yeah, you should give some examples why you evaluate or make a feedback like that, and prove your feedback. So you need to think a bit about this reflection. And afterwards you need to meet again in a national agency to talk about your results. So it was quite time consuming. Like probably it was not enough 1 hour, as this method, original or theoretically say that probably you will need to spend 1 hour, like, or half an hour to give a feedback for your colleague. So one was like, yeah, was time consuming. And afterwards, like after the senior trainers who were complaining about that, why we do this, it was not, it started to be not obligatory system for the senior trainers, but was more voluntary system. Rather, we want to get a feedback from the colleagues and NA workers, or we don't. Looking to the national agency side, so I enjoyed this system from one hand. The main thing, I think, it was it was the very structured way to give a feedback for the trainer. Very structured way. It was not like, oh, I feel that this training was, let's say, good, or I don't know, something didn't work out very well, but you don't have any proof, of your sentence or evaluation of a training and the trainer, him herself. And it was also probably a good system to build a feedback culture in national agency, because it's also not so easy to give a feedback for the trainer, because it's your colleague. It's not like approach in a business probably that, oh, I hire you and you work, and if the training is not so qualified, yeah, or in a high quality, so I will not hire you again. The approach of a national agency was always to develop the pool of trainers and help them to build their competences, and together have quality training courses, not separately, and to give a feedback, especially negative feedback. It was quite emotional part to say that, oh, but your organizational skills a bit, or you're lacking a bit of an organizational skill because I received a program not in time when we agreed. And it was quite difficult, but the questionnaire itself helped to give a feedback, and to give not in a negative way, how to say it, to give a positive feedback, even
more constructive way.
Yeah. Exactly, more constructive way, and you are hiding some a bit of emotional part. You're not so emotional at that moment when you are giving a feedback. You just, this questionnaire somehow helped to avoid some emotional parts and be more constructive, and evaluate those parts or assess those parts which are really important for the trainer, but not from your impulses, let's say. So I also talked with national agency workers who use the system, because now there are a lot of new workers that we don't know about the system at all, but we still have in a plan to written, oh, it's voluntary, you can do it. And we also reflected the same, that the giving feedback is, you need to know how to do it. And the questionnaire, the system, it really helps to do it. For the national agency, I was this coordinator of the training courses. So it just only once or twice, it helped me to see the need of the trainers, okay, what are the needs where we want to build the competences more, and to organize the trainings. So one was I do remember in Latvia for EVS trainers, and one was for safety or something reasons, where trainers wanted to develop their safety skills, or skills in a security and safety of participants, something like that. So also it should be probably originally that, okay, I know there's a lack of competences in my pool of trainers, so I can plan some training courses to develop those competences, but in reality it didn't work out very well. Maybe it could be, maybe it could work, but at that case it didn't work out very well. Okay. And looking, so probably for NA workers, it's more or less that's it. But looking then to participants who also were involved in this 360 assessment process, we were always informed the participants that some of you, not all the participants of a training course, will get a questionnaire, online questionnaire, where you should answer this questionnaire. So the feedback, like to receive those questionnaires for participants, were always high. I mean, the response of participants were high. But it was always a question: do participants really don't find also words in the right words or tolerant words in language? Let's say. Do we have a capacity or competences to evaluate or to assess and get to give a feedback for a trainer competences? And it was always a question and a quite huge discussion among national agency workers, among trainers, or quite sensitive one. I mean,
my question here, Agne, just to clarify, so the questionnaire for participants, it was like generic training evaluation questionnaire, or participants were getting specific questionnaire about set of trainer competences?
It was the second option. They got this questionnaire was divided in those three parts. So basically, we've got questions which is related with implementing of the trainings part, where we can see the competences of trainers, because in the preparation part or the evaluation part, we are not in a contact with a trainer. So we are in a contact with a trainer only in this implementing part. But it was not an overall questionnaire about the training course. It was a specific questionnaire about the trainer. The main probably problem was that this questionnaire in that case was anonymous, but only in participants' way. And we didn't know, actually, I'm not sure because I can't remember, but I think it was if you work in a peer, so we don't know participants for whom
this is like feedback to the whole team.
Exactly. I think it was the problem. I'm not sure if we were solving it or not. I can't remember. Maybe we were written that now the feedback goes for Laimonas, so you can give a feedback for Laimonas. But maybe it was like for Laimonas and Agne's team, and that's it. But in only this part, it was anonymous because we didn't know who. We knew for whom we sent a questionnaire, like for those participants, but we didn't know who respond to us, like Matas, John, or whatever who respond to that to this questionnaire. But other parts were not anonymous. You know the colleague, and it's you are working with your co-worker or national agency workers. So but you know who is giving the feedback for you. I'm just stopping for a while here because I stopped with this question, but it was quite sensitive question. Rather, participants should made an assessment for trainers' competences or not. I'm looking for a chat because I see that something is going on, but I'm not sure if there are some questions.
Yeah, I think there was a question, from
Nereus.
Nereus? Yeah.
So to answer the first question, so yes, the feedback from participants was collected on random basis. Was like we chose like whatever whom, we just sent a questionnaire and that's it. But the questionnaire was not sent like for 4 people or 6 people. It was usually sent for probably 10 people or more or less half of a group people, because we didn't know how much answers or response we can get. So it was number was higher. And another question, what was the most time consuming in the view of trainers, especially experienced trainers? That resulted with disinterest to continue 360 systems. I was probably I was not so clear enough, but I think it was time consuming because of the time you need to spend on a questionnaire and feedback giving. Was like on that. Maybe the structure of the system was not well organized, because what I said, that trainers after the training course, we directly sat together, made this an assessment, because we didn't want to make to meet or to make it online or to meet it later on after the training course. We didn't have actually online tools. Now I saw that there are lots of different tools for 360-degree to implement. You can download the app and you can do it with feedback while you are in a bus on a plane. But at that moment, it was quite like direct assessment, especially with both trainers' colleagues. That's why I said that it was a bit sensitive. Anyway, in any case, I think even for senior trainers, experienced trainers, it could be sensitive to give a feedback for your colleague. Another way, it's quite structured feedback, so probably it's also could be appreciated on that. And for time consuming, the process is not over when you give a feedback for your colleague, because you need to collect those feedbacks from other parts and then to look to this overall process. So it seems it takes time. I mean, also for this person who receive a feedback to look for those results, to see what kind of a feedback was it, and what I can do with that, or how would I live with that.
Yeah.
How much was the question adapted to duration at each seminar? That's nice question.
Yeah, and I think Agne then to try to answer shortly, and also if there would be more questions coming in for you, especially Agne, then perhaps then we move these questions to our Etherpad with the notes, so you can meanwhile, while Darko will continue, you will be able to answer the questions, because then time-wise we would need to switch. But please answer that one.
Yeah, okay. So the question, how much was the questionnaire adapted to different each seminar? So the questionnaire was not adapted, was the only one questionnaire, but you can choose those questions if you are not applicable to this training course. So if you didn't use something, or you didn't have you didn't apply any competence in a preparation field, section, so you can just you can just mark it. So it was only one questionnaire; it was not adopted. And even looking to the competence itself, so sometimes you apply the competence in one or another training course, sometimes not, and so that's why. Was the feedback collected, compared, and analyzed? No, and that's probably it was not a system based. If you imagine that those trainers are our company workers who work together all the time, so probably you can compare some results and see what kind of a group what kind of developments or improvements you can make for a group or team as such. But now we just meet some trainers in one training course and we say goodbye after that. And it was never a purpose or aim to compare with both different questionnaires. But if a question is about the same questionnaire, so yes, when we talk about the 360 system, so the same questionnaire is answered by participants, colleagues, and national agency workers, and those results are analyzed
and compared.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Agne, for sharing. Really interesting. And then actually, if anybody would go to our meeting notes, and you, Agne, yourself would probably get surprised how much is there already.
Okay.
And thanks a lot to people contributing with the notes. I see mainly Snezhna and Nerijus, then thumbs up. And then others also feel free at the moment to write question there. You don't need any login or anything. And then I ask Agne then to check on the questions, and then maybe you can provide answers on the spot.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm ready to listen for Darko.
Good. So I'm putting your sound on mute then.
Good.
And welcoming Darko. Darko Markovic, probably introduce yourself Better than I would do, and we see already a visual turning on. So thanks also another Agne who was drawing thoughts and ideas what Agne was sharing. So we continue with Darko then.
Good afternoon from Belgrade, Serbia. Yes, I think it was very interesting. I don't want to waste much time about introducing myself. But I think, as Arama said, I'm wearing several hats. So apart from doing lots of training, I think in youth field or other fields for quite a while, I also do quite some coaching, individual, one-to-one, mostly in leadership development. So my experience actually will be connected to, how to say, all those fields. And I will try to complement what Agne was saying. So I will try to speak from three different experiences. One will be my experience as a learner or experience as a user of a 360-degree assessment. Second will be user as a coach. Actually, what do I do with 360-degree assessments and results for my clients? And the last one, and maybe the latest I was engaged with, is when I was involved as a consultant, developing actually a 360-degree assessment for Eurodesk, which is actually something very new and still in the very, very, how to say, very pilot stage. So I will tell you a little bit about that. To cut my story short and maybe to understand the context where I was speaking, I already posted 2 links for 2 documents. You can see it either in Etherpad or in the chat a little bit above. So
I also shared the link just now, so for people easier to find. So I posted
scroll
one.
Up and down.
I posted one, and should I post immediately the other one as well? Yeah.
Yes, I think it's okay. So people can get just. So this is just a background document, and if you want to look a little bit more in depth and a little bit more in detail, those could be, I think, relevant. I think the first document is a sample report from one 360-degree assessment tool, which is called Emotional and Social Competence Inventory. It's a long name. It's called ESCI in short. And the second thing is the document, which is a small, how to say, brochure about the competence framework that I was developing for Eurodesk and together with Eurodesk, and gives a bit of background for this last part of my story. Not to jeopardize Agne's graphic recording screen, but I would love to share my screen and share some slides. So then we can get back to the graphic. I don't know if it's possible to see 2 screens at the same time. Technically, I'm not sure, but I would love to, if it's possible, that I can actually share my screen now.
Try to share, and then we'll see.
Okay, I share my screen now. You can also share your screen while the other participant is sharing. Zoom said.
It says you can, or you cannot.
No, I cannot.
No, you cannot. Maybe then, for the moment, I can ask Agne to unshare her screen from her device, and then we can try.
Okay,
and then we have a number of people from Pool of Trainers from European Youth Forum. Hey guys.
Yoo-hoo. Okay.
Good to see you.
So if you see the ducks, then you see my
loading. Yeah, the ducks.
Good. If you see the ducks, it's okay. Let me see. Okay, just let me move this chat somehow. Okay. So as I said, I will try to speak from the 3 experiences shortly, not to having in mind also the time we have, and for details you can also look at these documents further. So my first experience comes back in 2010. It was 8 years ago. I was in US. So just to complement what maybe Agne was saying, I think I will take a little bit the tour and go a little bit to US and come back to Europe. So it was a course I took in Cleveland, Ohio. It was about leadership development, especially focused on emotional and social intelligence and related competencies to that concept. So, as part of the learning experience or as part of the training as such, we've been asked to participate and to take one 360-degree assessment, which is this ESSKI, Emotional Social Competence Inventory. It has a concept behind of emotional social intelligence, and it has 12 competencies. Here on the screen, you see just a sample of that whole graph. I think the graph is longer. It has 12 competencies. And basically, we've been asked to select a number of people, that we would send a link to do assessment of us. And we also did a self-assessment ourselves. So basically, on the graphs, you get something like this, and the dot, the round dot, is self, like myself. How actually this is actually not from my report, but it's an example of the report. So the dot is yourself. The blue line is the average of others. Then this a square, the empty square, is a sample that was done during the, let's say, standardization of the instrument. So basically, it shows the kind of, not really the average, but more than average. It shows between, let's say, 25th percentile to 75th percentile. So basically, if you're to the right of that box, you can consider yourself beyond average on that competency in comparison to the sample. And if you see the little red thing there, when it's called set strength, for example, in this instrument particularly, they would say if the result is above 85% of the scale, you should consider that as a strength. That was how it was actually kind of developed strength. Other things you can look and compare. In the report itself, you will see also that apart from this overall graph, you can also develop this is actually what I just said. This is a little bit interpretation of how to read the graph. But you can also see, for example, for each of the competency, you see averages by different groups or different reporters. So, for example, you can see total others when actually all others are together, and it's average for all others. You can see self. For example, you can see manager, direct reports, and peers. I will come back to these roles. These are the averages for every single competency. If you want to go real much deeper and very, very macro, you can even see for each of the competency on every single question, basically how people rated you. And then in the last bit, you get also some, some open-ended comments from people who did participate in your assessment that are in the very end of the document that I sent. So not to go so much into construction of such an instrument, which actually apparently took a lot of time also to standardize it. And it's a standardized instrument. It's not something that was tailor-made for a specific group. So it's a really rather instrument that follows a concept of, let's say, emotional social intelligence, particularly linked to leadership. What was for me very interesting and clearly, especially in the very beginning when I was getting the invitation to participate in the assessment, I realized how do I, as a, let's say, freelance trainer, which I took as my profession, so I don't work for a company, I don't work for an organization, I just work for myself. I was confronted with the choice, okay, select your manager, select your direct reports, select your peers, select your clients and customers and others. And I was wondering, who are these people in my context? And it took me quite a while actually to make a decision. Who are my managers? Because, for example, if you work as a consultant or a trainer, for example, people that you're contracting you to do training, let's say national agencies, for example, or Saltos, or other organizations, do you consider them as clients, or you consider them as your manager? Or who are the clients, who are the managers? So I had to make that kind of up in my mind. So it was a bit interesting, I think, moment to think about how actually specificity of our job actually fits in these kind of instruments, which are obviously developed for more organizational use, and in a very also hierarchical organizations, where it's very clear to who is your manager, to who reports to you, who are your peers, and who are your customers. That was just an interesting, I think, question to think. How do we fit? And maybe one thinking, if this would be to be applied in our context, and if you think in terms of developing an instrument, would be, I think, one of the questions to decide actually who are these roles to consult, and how actually these roles could be named and called in our context, let's say in the context of youth work training. So that was my first experience. My second experience is coming more from my coaching practice, where I normally have one-to-one work with people who are already in management positions, and sometimes and very often, actually it's maybe 50%, but often actually I receive requests for coaching from companies for individuals. And sometimes it actually happens that actually in the companies themselves, they already did the 360-degree assessment for within their procedures or HR structures. And then sometimes as a recommendation after these results, they are maybe invited or recommended to take some coaching. So sometimes I get clients, coaching clients, not the company clients, individuals who already have some results. So, and then they present these results, and then we also have to see how they interpret these results and how they see that as a coaching goals, and not to go so much into coaching, but use it as a starting point. That can be one experience. Second experience is sometimes in the coaching process as such, let's say in the middle or somewhere, we feel there is a need for more feedback, and then maybe instruments like the previous one or maybe some others could be useful actually for the coaching client to get more feedback and to get that. But so to say, I'm always very concerned or maybe cautious, because 360-degree assessments are very robust. I don't know if that's the word, but you need to, it's not just asking one person for feedback. You need to ask a number of people, I don't know, 10, 15 people. So actually it's time consuming. You have to animate lots of people to participate. That often also very expensive because of that. So sometimes it's question really, is it really the most efficient way to get feedback, to participate in a large exercise like that? But sometimes it's useful. And maybe connected to what Agne was saying, then for me, there are several questions that are very important. One is the clarity of the purpose of that exercise. So the client has to really understand actually why we do that. And this is really important, I think, to be able to take it openly and in the right, with the right intention and for the benefits. I think the context is important, and trust as well. So clarity of purpose, the right context, and trust for me are the prerequisites that any kind of 360-degree assessment actually works. And then I think it's very important that actually this is somehow linked to client's agenda. So not that's only to the company's agenda or sometimes it's called sponsor's agenda, but really to the client's development agenda. How does it actually fit to my development goals, to my interests in investing in my development? So linking to client's agenda. And Agne was talking about giving feedback, and I think these instruments are maybe good because you can use them as a starting point. And basically, it is not about giving feedback; it's rather having a conversation about it. And basically, while using 360-degree as a basis for feedback, you are actually more in a position to ask questions than actually to give feedback in terms of saying something. So basically, feedback is a kind of guided conversation rather than an opinion. Kind of, I will tell you now what this all means.
Okay. Do you say, Darko, then actually it's also something to consider, like for us in the future, that how not to make 360 more like a very technical questions, answers, but how to make it more conversational in a way?
Well,
or it's more about the coaching context?
No, for me, it comes to the moment of, well, of course, I think you have to define the roles. Who is actually interpreting the results, and who is the holding this? How to say? You can call it holding space, or who is holding delivering a feedback session. But by delivering, I don't mean necessarily telling this as a diagnosis, as a conclusion, but somebody who is, I think, asking the right questions for the person to interpret the results. Sometimes you need to have a bit of explanation what it is technically. I mean, if you have competency, sometimes you need to explain what this means. But in terms of understanding the results, I think that's actually very important, that this is more a conversation with open-ended questions rather than conclusions, how to say, guided, if I answered your question, Alex. But I have one interesting hint after. I will jump just quickly through the Eurodesk work, and I come back to a question again. So in Eurodesk, not to cut story short, last was a whole process. The 360 is still under construction, but it was really a whole process of developing a competence framework for one particular role there, which is called Eurodesk Mobility Advisor. And the whole process was really going into mapping of the competencies and developing the tools. And in the second document, you can also see some of the tools we developed on the way, some card games and some board games and some fun stuff. But we are also working on development of possibility to have a 360-degree assessment. Currently, it is in a phase that it looks like an Excel sheet. And in the Excel sheet, you have possibility to assess yourself, that you ask your coordinator to assess you, and then ask up to 5 peers to do it. So basically, in terms of roles, there are 3 roles. There is basically self, there is a coordinator, and there are up to 5 peers. And in the, let's say, Excel sheet, you can, after this exercise, you get scores like that in a table. But you can, on this, as you can see, the list of 12 competencies that we identified in that role. And then you can also get a graph like this. So this is very, very raw, as you can see, not a fancy design like the first one. So this is really an Excel sheet thing where you can see yourself and scores of your coordinator and the average of your peers. But, and this is very context related. So actually the competence framework developed for a particular organization, for a particular context. It's not a generic instrument like the first one that I was talking about. So people can much more relate to the questions, and so they see it's very close to their job. But coming back to a question, Lamina said, I think this is maybe crucial for me, apart from setting the right context for the exercise. It's always a question, actually, what do you focus on, and how to make feedback really effective. And yes, and to to avoid giving the right recipe for that, because I guess, for example, in coaching, it very much depends, I think, on the client's agenda, on the client's goals, and how to link this exercise to client's goals, so to keep up motivation. But for example, you can consider things like this. For example, if I can click more. I think what a 360-degree assessment sometimes gives you as an idea, or somebody participate, you can, for example, see your blind spots. Something that maybe, maybe other people would see better for yourself. It could be sometimes that maybe you overestimate yourself, and maybe some other people have a bit different opinion. And then you can maybe also see, okay, why is that like that? Why this perception is like that, especially if many people are in agreement. So you can see blind spots. You can also see hidden strengths, which I think is also interesting. Sometimes there's a tendency that other people recognize your strengths. Other people saying, okay, you're really good at that. Or we see that like that in you, and maybe you don't see it so strong. So maybe you don't recognize that as a potential, or maybe you tend to underestimate that. Some people say sometimes, well, I already know what I need to work on. This result, they just confirm what I already knew. And this is something, this is what people call it sometimes trust your gut. Basically, I already know, if I'm a trainer, I already know I need to work on maybe more patience and maybe more understanding of the group dynamics. And maybe more courage, I don't know. But this just shows, confirms what I already knew. Sometimes it's a question of, and it's, I think, a nice expression called low-hanging fruit. And it's maybe something that actually you miss a bit, or something that you can hold on as maybe the first thing to focus on, maybe where you don't need a huge development process and personality change. So you really need small maybe investment into something that is almost there. So something kind of strength in becoming. And yeah, some people would say focus on strengths and to leverage the weaknesses, and maybe also consider how can you use strengths to work on the difference on the weaknesses or areas for development, or perhaps maybe sweet spot. Just to put another fancy word into the air, sweet spot is sometimes when you see a competency which actually is kind of connected to your values or connected to something you care about, something you're passionate about, and maybe this is something that maybe you need to focus on, also development in that area. Just to put a bit of, but this is not the recipe. So I said, depends really on the client, depends on the context, and I would prefer really always to start with questions and ask questions. When I was working for Eurodesk, for example, I was thinking, okay, maybe I should develop some kind of guidelines or for somebody working with the Excel sheet. And then I come up with some questions I will show with you. This is not a recipe, but it could be also questions like these ones, for example, or maybe different ones or simpler, but it is more open-ended than actually telling you're good at that, you need to develop this.
Yeah. The things you showed before, these few things, what to focus on, do you imagine that it's also like some options, like before I start doing my own 360 review process, can it be also that I make this choice? Like, I don't know, I want to analyze my blind spots or something like this, and then...
Yeah, well, that's an interesting, I never approach it that way. I mean, first, of course, maybe precondition is that actually the person really understands the concept of the assessment. Yeah. So, for example, if it's based on the competencies, that you need to know the concept before, how to say, maybe also to know what to expect from the assessment. But maybe that actually, when you're saying that, it would be maybe worth of clarifying, maybe your own purpose, not just a purpose in general for development, maybe, clarifying your focus. And maybe it would be interesting, to focus your perception on certain things, even up front. It could be interesting,
Okay, let's see, maybe, some other questions.
Maybe we can come back to Agne's drawing. I can come back to this.
Agne, can you switch on your screen to see what we have so far? Let's see if that
works.
Would work.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, it's starting. So I think there were a few comments. Oh.
I have some questions here. I can hardly imagine to learn something from the data without having someone to talk about the results. Yes, exactly. I think I agree, especially if there is a concept behind something. I think the first thing is really to understand what this shows. Not necessarily the results, but really to understand, what this graph means. I mean, what are these lines? What are these words? So actually, and I think normally you would need to have this walkthrough. And for example, in the first experience I mentioned in the US, we had in the course, was one moment in the course where we've been divided. Like, of course, they couldn't give us individual feedback. It was a big group, but we've been divided in smaller groups with some facilitators there, who gave us an overview of what this instrument is. And then, yeah, we had a chance a little bit to look at our results and maybe ask some questions. So it was not full feedback session, but it was, yes, a little bit explained before.
So I think it's something that Nerijus also commented on Heike's comment that also in a trainers guild, the idea was that with the appraisal system, there is an idea to connect 3 trainers, and that these trainers would have opportunity to meet live actually and analyze results of the 360 of different feedback received from different sites, and then engage in the conversation.
Like, but when you say trio system, I'm just trying to understand, did you mean that each of them would assess each other? So it's kind of a kind of circle, or?
I think it's more to analyze results that have been received from participants, from peers and so on, and to understand what do they mean, and sometimes I involve colleagues into the analysis. Yeah. Okay, I see already also people saying bye, because also our time is ending in a way. So thanks a lot, Darko. And then, you left a couple of files for more reading. These are here in the chat, and the links are also on the Etherpad notes. Again, our colleagues left a lot of notes and comments from what you shared so far. We have also a visual from Agne. Just a few things before we finish. I started at the very beginning saying that we do these webinars as part of the project that we started developing, a service for trainers. So I wonder if anybody from the project would be able to give shortly what is upcoming, what we're planning further on. Yeah. So thanks a lot, Darko, for a very interesting input, and I somehow feel we might come back to you with more questions and more experiences that you could share with us for the project. So I wonder if maybe Nerijus or anybody from the project team could be.
Yeah, I can
please
tell a bit what's coming next. We are in the first phase of development, and we are creating web environment for running the service. So now what will come in next week will be already we will reach out to trainers to test very early prototype of web environment to collect feedback, and we will run several testing rounds to get as much feedback as possible and needed. So that will be next week's. Then we're continuously working on content for the homepage. And I think today's inputs from both Agne and Darko was very helpful to get crystal clear some buy-ins and benefits for different actors of 360 degree. Then we will have at the end of May partners meeting in Austria to conclude first phase, and then prepare to enter the second phase, which will be mainly focusing on self-assessment tools. Hopefully next webinar in this series will be at beginning of June. And finally, end of June, the Guild will have our General Assembly meeting and also training seminar in Lithuania. So we'll be able to meet live and even go further into exploring ideas and collecting feedback about tools we're creating, especially the system to support each other, where Trio is envisioned in this process next to technical development. So that would be next steps for our project. So we are very open and interested to include more people. So if you follow and drop us an email, which is in the Etherpad, you can get in contact and we would be happy to include you in developments. So that would be from our project news.
All right, thanks a lot, Nerijus. And then, yeah, everybody follow the developments. From time to time, we are consulting with the larger community of trainers concerning different kind of developments that we're doing now. The idea also is to develop, something that would be used by trainers, by our colleagues, by us ourselves. That's why you can see that from time to time we are launching some surveys and questionnaires and so on to develop a product that is needed and effective and useful for our work. Thanks a lot, everyone, really, for the contributions. Thanks a lot, Agne, for the visuals, which will be shared afterwards on our event page. We're also planning to make a blog post on the Guild's website. And then we will, as far as a number of people already reacted to the Facebook event, we will add things there on the Facebook event so you can come back to the content that we discussed here. So thanks a lot, everyone. And yeah, we had in some moment almost 26 people, plus I know a big group from the European Youth Forum joining here. So thanks a lot for joining, and then see you later.